Welcome to the Sharing Our Journey podcast. It's a special episode of the Sharing Our Journey podcast. We're actually doing this on video this time to share with you as we close the year 2022 out. We're wanting to reflect back as a group of three just in how God has led in this year. And man, if we go back to the start of 2022, it was a start that was filled with adversity, some tough decisions. Not really sure at the start of the year if we thought we would be where we are now. So would you guys agree with that, or is that a different sense for you?
Definitely.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I don't know that if we knew if we would even be here at this point,
right? Yeah,
in the year at all. But yeah, 2020.
We made it.
Honestly, the beginning of the year and the end of the year feels like they were separate years.
They do.
They feel like
we've
two
spent
different
so much
years.
time. Yep.
But it's been an exciting year.
It has.
And we've seen the Lord do some incredible things.
Incredible stuff.
Things that, we couldn't even imagine
Yeah.
a year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, all glory to God for that.
Yeah.
Praise God for that, because He's done some stuff that we could not have planned or manifested on our own right. Like, He has come in and done some incredible things.
Yeah.
And so
I think
we just want to give Him some praise for that.
Yeah, I think So a sentiment that I've heard expressed with our staff, leadership team, volunteers, people just throughout our church community is there's a feeling of excitement.
Yeah.
There's a feeling of a joy that we are really experiencing a move of God. Mm-hmm. And that through 2022, we're going to talk about some of our favorite moments and kind of highlights and things like that. But through the challenges of 2022, through the high points of 2022, we've seen God be so faithful. Mm-hmm. And we have got to watch God do some absolutely incredible things. And I'm excited to kind of reflect on that with y'all and see where this conversation goes. And I hope that, you watching or listening at home, you'll maybe chime in, let us know some of your favorite moments from the year and all the great things that God has done in this place.
Yeah. And look, it started out with some hardships, some things that there's been things all along the way, I guess. But
sure. Yeah.
But the beginning of the year, it was hard. Mm-hmm. And I think there's, God knows. There's a reason why God says to be alert and sober-minded, right? There's a reason why God says that your enemy, the devil, is prowling around like a lion seeking whom he may devour. And there's a reason why it says that our war is not against flesh and blood. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there had been some things, like I look back at last January, and we had a night of worship, and I think this just gives a good snapshot of a little snapshot, even a thumbnail of some of the spiritual warfare that we've encountered. And we had this night of worship that we had multiple worship team members get sick, get COVID. We had a snowstorm come through that caused us to have to push back the night, that caused us to have to move rehearsals. It was like we had some of our people, because it was pushed back, they were supposed to have to work. Our drummer's a firefighter. His schedule is very rigid. Yep. It's hard for him to get his dates moved. And we prayed hard that his superior officers would allow him to move that date, and that happened. But it was like one thing after another of this is not working out. Like I was this close to canceling the thing just outright. Yeah. And the Lord just said, no, be patient. Yeah. Wait, and I'm going to handle it. And So so it was like, okay, we're trusting you with this.
Yeah.
And he came through and made it all work out. And it was a great night.
Yeah,
it was
it
a
was.
great night. And it really, I think, started to set the scene for the rest of the year. And that wasn't anything that any of the three of us did. It was the Lord moving and working in people's lives that night. And I believe that was a point where it started a little spark that has been blew into a brush fire that has started to sweep through our congregation.
Yeah, certainly. And, we talk about the beginning of the year and the challenges we face. And, of course, our church is still in the process of seeking a new lead pastor. And that's, what's going on. This, kind of the elephant in the room. And that's something that our church walked through in that season. And, of course, there was nothing that was handled poorly or anything. There's no hard feelings or anything like that. But that's something that's scary for a church. Something that can put and incite fear in people. Sickness was something that certainly people have dealt with. Several of our students came home from a trip early in the year and were sick. I was sick early in the year, and it really seemed getting the year off the ground was something that was really, 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 really hard to do. Of course, y'all know I'm a kind of a space nerd, and you think about the amount of thrust that's required to get a rocket out of the atmosphere is about 80% of the fuel that it takes for its entire trip. And that's really what 2022 felt like was those first couple months was just so much prayer and so much work. And I'm kind of our resident spreadsheet guy. I like things color coded and organized with extra columns. And the first couple months of 2022, you kind of had to delete those out of the spreadsheet. They didn't go as planned always. It wasn't always exactly how we thought it would happen. But really coming out of that, it was so good and so wonderful.
The best stuff always comes out of a time where it didn't work out like you think it's going to.
Truly.
That's been my experience in ministry since I was a kid, and my parents would take me on mission trips. You plan for months to go on a mission trip, and then you get there and you throw out all the plans because nothing goes like you think it's going to.
Yeah.
But the best stuff comes out of that because that's when you stop and you're like, okay, God, our best laid plans aren't working.
Yeah.
We have to trust you completely in this moment to move.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been striving to do, and not just us, but I think our church has come to a place where they are ready to do that, and have been doing that in the latter part of this year specifically. So it's been just amazing to watch. I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and I think that would be true of all of us because, and like you said, it feels like a different year altogether.
It does.
There are times I have to remind myself, oh yeah, that was 2022 as well.
Yeah.
And as one who personally have gone through, technically I'm in my third position within this church in the span of
4 years, 3.5.
Well, but really, even if you just go back to, last July, I was still the youth pastor. So a year and a half, I've gone into kind of 3 different roles.
Yeah.
And so there's times where it does feel like, oh yeah, that was 1 year.
Yeah.
Rather than multiple. But through all that, we've seen God move. We've seen things, and even that worship night you were referring to. If you think about what was to come, that worship night took place before we even knew that the lead pastor would be leaving. It was almost like that was the, as hard as it was to get to that night with all the challenges, it was something that our people and we included needed to kind of have before we walked through what we were going to walk through.
Yeah.
And then, the struggle of kind of getting this year off the ground, of course, many of you know, included for my family personally, as we were transitioning as a church, on February the 19th, my father passed away unexpectedly. Of course, that added stress to these guys because, anytime you remove a member of the team that, obviously has family business and stuff going on that it adds stress and pressure and just, things were changing and it was kind of a crazy time. But coming out of that, Jonathan, there was a moment specifically that I remember from this year that no one else in our church shared. But I was driving over the causeway in Mobile, Alabama, going from Mobile County to Baldwin County. I called you, and I had already been scheduled to preach on Easter. This is something that we had already kind of worked through and was just set up so that it fell that way. And I called Jonathan, and I said, hey, I know what God's leading me to preach and to preach about on Easter. And as we kind of got 2022 off the ground, we were discussing the other day a moment where we kind of felt like we built to a moment and in some ways like a dam burst almost that we felt and experienced something was that Sunday, that Easter. And of course, the message that God had given me and that our church has kind of repeatedly seen and walked through was this message of the anchor of hope. And that in the darkest days of our lives, on the most difficult circumstances, some of which our church has experienced in recent days, there's something that we can hold on to. That 2,000 years ago, a Jewish carpenter rose from the dead. And if that's true, then on the darkest days of our lives, we can have a real and solid hope to hold on to. And, kind of coming out of the beginning of the year, I know that was a message that I needed. It was a message that was so true and important for me, but I think it was a message for our church. And I know that God really worked and moved. And that day, that Easter Sunday, really did feel like a move of the Spirit that was not a high point, but really us setting ourselves up and God setting us up for what he was going to continue to do throughout the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say through the end of March, the beginning of April, there was this, a freedom in the Spirit that started to rise. And then Easter Sunday, it kind of exploded.
Yeah.
Kind of exploded that day. And it's almost like we haven't looked back.
Yeah.
We haven't looked back since then.
Yeah.
We've just been going. And
been along for the ride, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and a couple of interesting things you brought up there, too. You brought up the word hope in that sermon, but you and I have talked about, and Bo's been part of those conversations, too, when you look back at every sermon series we had in 2022, the theme of hope is somewhere in that sermon series.
Yeah.
It may not be the overall theme of every one of them, but somewhere in there, hope.
Yeah.
And it's to the point where we've kind of looked at hope as being the word for 2022.
Yeah.
And all those sermon series, just so our people listening to this or watching this know, we pray through those and we plan those. So for 2022, we planned those in 2021, at the end of 2021.
Yeah.
Even after Paul left, the only change was we added the Nehemiah Ezra series. Everything else was sermon series we had all planned through and prayed through. And so it's just interesting that theme of hope was so prevalent with something God had put in our hearts in 2021 for 2022. And even who's up, the rotation. The only thing that changed was I slid into a different role and you slid into mine there. And so that Easter Sunday was just the rotation, right? It was like, it's David's Sunday.
Yeah.
Right.
And it is truly amazing that, God knew.
Mm-hmm.
God knew. God knew that, on a day where we celebrate resurrection, I would still be grieving from death.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that, something that's so powerful and so important that we realize, church is not just we show up for an event once a week and have a Jesus party and go home. But it really is when we bring together all that God has put inside of us, we see an outpouring of God's Spirit. And from that, we experience God in ways that we never could have on our own. And I think that's something that God's shown me this year through y'all, through you watching, through our community, that God blesses and multiplies, that together we are so much more because of how God works in community. And that's been such an encouragement to me this year. And that theme of us coming together has been something you've seen kind of throughout this calendar year so much.
Yeah, and I think to a large degree what everybody has kind of rallied around in that sense of community, or you've brought up the word family within the church, is that idea of hope. Like when we didn't know what else, we knew we could all center around Christ.
Yeah.
And the hope we have in Him, and that's there were times where that was all we had to cling to.
Yeah.
And that was more than enough.
Yeah.
And through those moments, I think we've learned to trust more in Him and to realize we don't need anything other than hope in Him.
Yeah.
And there's been some great things that have happened. That Bo mentioned one worship night already, but we had other worship nights throughout the year. At least one other, right?
And one more, yeah.
And I would even add in the job that you and the team did when we were allowed, we were blessed to host the National Day of Prayer service here for the community. And more recently, we had the community-wide unity group service here, and you and the team were able to lead in that. And I reflect back on those, every one of those, and think of how worshipful those moments were with you and the team leading, just because, one, y'all do a great job, but the presence of God was there at each one of those services. And that wasn't to say that some of those didn't have their own set of challenges.
Oh, they all did. No, it is amazing because it's like Satan can smell when God's about to move, and then he tries to pounce on it.
Yeah.
Because all of them had abnormal things that went wrong that would not normally go wrong.
Yeah.
But that's just how it goes. He just does that. And that's fine because God's bigger and God worked all of them out. And you know what? All of them were great.
Yeah.
And He moved and people worshiped like authentically. And you could feel the Holy Spirit in that place.
Yeah.
What's really wonderful to me too, coming out of Easter, is something you alluded to earlier, is I don't look back at Easter and see like, man, remember when everybody worshiped at Easter?
Right.
And then it's just, it's gone back down since then. But it was like,
No.
there was a moment where you really recognized, hey, there's a newfound freedom in the Spirit to respond in worship. And I felt that ongoing. That's been something I experience weekly now.
Yeah, I was like, Easter, it was like, kind of did this up to Easter, but now it's still gradually going.
Yeah.
Like it's still people are singing louder.
Yeah.
They're singing even when we do a new song. I hear people singing, and that has not always been the case. And it's not even just about the singing; it's really about the attitude behind the singing.
Yeah.
And the attitude is different.
Yeah.
God is changing hearts and minds, and allowing our congregation to experience Him in a fresh and new way.
Yeah.
Like He wants them to experience Him.
Yeah.
Like we're learning to enjoy Him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just about coming here to follow the bouncing ball, for the sing-along for a little bit and then sit back down and listen to somebody passively. It really, we are learning as a church to enjoy God.
Yeah.
And that is going to have a huge impact on how we minister to our city in the coming year.
I think coming out of that, what you've seen is our response to worship God has then, something we say is that worship is our response.
Yeah.
That, we believe in Jesus, but then coming out of that, we worship through song, we worship through baptism. And then what you've seen is people in that newfound freedom, in that desire to worship God, in that desire to be in the house of God. You've seen an outpouring of people who are now looking for opportunities to serve others. And we have seen God open so many doors. We've thought about some of those and some of our kind of favorites. And, I think about Adam Fest. I think that was in May, where God opened the door for us to just be a blessing to families in our community, have our Adam Fest Kids Zone. And, man, I thought that was an incredible opportunity and just really enjoyed, that was made available to us, that God would allow us to do that. And then to see the response of people from our church who believed in that and said, I want to give my Saturday to come help families and help serve our city. I think about that moment as kind of one of those hallmark moments where I really saw God moving here in this place.
Yeah. And I think, Bo, when you talked about enjoyment, who doesn't want to be around people who are having fun and who are enjoying whatever it is they're doing? And I think the enjoyment of God that we've experienced, our being able to enjoy Him more, has created that attitude or that emotion even when we go out and step into service areas, because then people encounter truly joyful people. And they may not even know why we're joyful, right? That some of them may think we're crazy. But
some of us are crazy.
Some of us are.
That might be an accurate understanding.
But it has continued to present more and more opportunities, and our church has been blessed this year in the midst of all that God has done. One of the things He's done is continued to open more and more avenues for us to love people, for the gospel to be shared through sources that just they get to know that, hey, this church showed up and did what they said they were going to do at this, so now we can trust them with this. And it's almost like it's biblical. We were good stewards with what we were given, and we've been given more. I think I've read that somewhere in there.
Seems familiar.
Seems familiar.
Seems very familiar.
But I would couple in with Adam Fest our kind of renewed emphasis on Main Street and the Friday nights on Main. And the relationships we've been able to build there. And one of my favorite Friday night on Main moments for the year was the first Friday night on Main. Harrodsburg First had been seeking some type of attraction type thing for kids and families. We at the same time were looking for a way to plug Vacation Bible School. And as a staff, we just had this what if moment of can we do a rock wall for kids to come and climb, and it to be a spectacle on Main Street. And man, the moment about the rock wall that stands out the most, though, honestly, was being able to stand up in a business meeting and say, hey, we feel we need to do this. We don't want to stress the budget, so we need people to step up and pay so that we can rent this rock wall. And people did. Where we were able to pay for the rental of the rock wall without touching budget dollars. And we got there, and man, that could have gone wrong too. The weather for Friday Night on Main could have been bad and canceled the event. So we had a backup plan as far as what to do with the wall if that happened. But it was a great night weather-wise. And we got promotion through social media by other groups to say, hey, look at what is on Main Street, this massive rock wall, and people showed up. And man, that rock wall stayed busy from start to finish that night. And we were able to engage all these families and tell them about Vacation Bible School and just get to know some of them. And say, hey, we care about you and your kids. Have fun. Right? And it was just a great way, again, to serve the city in a way that we would often view and say, well, that's kind of silly. All we did was show up with a rock wall. But it provided opportunities.
And I think something you see out of that is our church, and something that I'm constantly encouraged about with our faith community here, is that, we are committed, not just we are committed to reaching the next generation. And out of, that first Friday night on Main, coming into Vacation Bible School, which is honestly my favorite week of the whole year. It's the best week of any year is Vacation Bible School. I love it. It's just the best. But you saw people come out and serve at VBS, and people take their time to be here. Why? Because it's a commitment that we've made to say, hey, if the next generation's our passion. We want to reach kids. We want to reach students. We want to reach college students. And, VBS, throughout the whole summer, you saw that with a student group going to camp and a kids group going to camp. And our student night that we had in the middle of July was so much fun, and got to invite parents and younger kids and senior adults to come be a part of what kind of a Wednesday night would look like for us on the regular. And then through the summer, and even ending kind of our summer with helping Campbellsville Harrodsburg students move in, that commitment that you all made, that the people who are invested in this community said, hey, we're committed to reaching another generation. That was such an exciting time.
Which, again, is another thing that, to me, in my mind, that is God putting that on our hearts. And I think the reason for that, and I'm going to say this as gently as I can, is that these are confusing times,
Yes.
especially for young people.
Yeah.
And the Bible says that God is not the author of confusion,
Right.
that He is truth. And He wants them to know and walk and live in truth.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to see how He uses us to do that.
Yeah, and I was speaking to our students a couple nights ago, and something I said to them was, it's never been harder to be a student. It really has not. It's never been harder to be even an elementary school student. The challenges and the pressures and the questions and the comparison, and it's so heavy. It's such a heavy load that young people are bearing. And something that, as we wrap up 2022 and look into 2023, something I'm so excited about is the way that God is using and positioning our church to reach the next generation, to build up families, and to reach kids, and to reach students, and to reach college students. It really is something exciting and incredible. And I look back at 2022 and just think about how good God has been in our Next Gen ministries. And of course, Andrea couldn't be here with us today in this discussion, but I know that me and her have shared conversations about how encouraging it's been and how grateful we are for a church that supports that. There are lots of churches. You guys know this. Y'all have experienced other churches, worked at other churches, not to say anything about the churches you worked at specifically, but just in other churches, it is true. There are other churches that could care less whether or not they reach another generation, as long as the people who are adults in that church get what they want and do what they want. They don't put other people first. But, I remember our student night that we had in July and invited our whole church out to. There's a group of senior adults who don't have kids in our student ministry, some of who don't even have grandchildren in our student ministry, but they showed up and played dumb games and ate pizza and listened to the loud music and supported our students because they care about reaching another generation with the good news of Jesus. And to me, man, as a student pastor, there's nothing more encouraging than that, to know that this is a place, man, we believe in the next generation, and God is positioning us and using us to reach young people, and that's so exciting.
Yeah.
It is.
It's and you've already alluded to a few of those. Our senior adults
Are awesome. They're
at
awesome.
HBC are phenomenal.
They're the best.
Because those same senior adults, and even some more, came to Jingle Jam.
Yeah.
Again, a situation that was not styled for them.
No,
right?
It's not an event that is designed for senior
them.
adults.
But they're welcome to come.
I think they had fun.
I hope so, right?
If nothing else, I made a fool of myself. So I think some of them may just come to watch me make a fool of myself.
Yeah.
But you can do that most Sunday mornings too. So,
Yeah, but and the senior adults are part of our groups here at HBC, and we have groups that meet on Sunday morning and groups that meet Thursday night or Wednesday night. We have groups for all ages, and then our men's ministry and women's ministry have groups that meet. And our senior adults take, they do fun things. We got to go with them to watch White Christmas recently, and it's just it's refreshing to be around people of all different ages, and I really love when we can get some of those groups together, like the men's and women's ministry, where you mix some of those ages, or a jingle jam or one of those.
Look, our men's breakfast. Can we just stop and talk about that for a second? Because they've been great. Like just men of all ages coming, meeting together over breakfast. It's not like we haven't gotten into like deep theological discussions, but it's just been good to get to talk to them and get to know people better. I mean,
and we are still Baptist, so we do eat whenever we possibly can schedule anything around a meal.
Yeah.
That's a very Baptist thing about us,
And obviously, none of us were able to go to the women's night where they met this fall because we're not women.
But we have wives. You and I.
But we all have wives that went.
Us,
and we all heard really great things from our wives about just the spectrum, the age spectrum that was there, and how everybody worshipped together and prayed together.
Yeah. And
like, it's beautiful. It's what the church is supposed to be.
And this is not my cheat sheet, okay? But something we have talked about repeatedly through this year is what you see in moves of God. When the Spirit of God is together, people unify.
Yeah.
And the struggles that so often you face in churches is, the senior adults don't like the young adults, and the young adults don't like the middle-aged adults, and the middle-aged adults are mad about what the teenagers did, and the teenagers are raising hell or doing whatever they did, and people can't get along. But when you see the Spirit of God moving, what we have seen and spoken time and time again is when the Spirit of God moves, unity comes with it. And we have experienced a move of God's Spirit. And with that has come senior adults who love and are seeking to serve students, and students who love and are seeking to serve adults, and just up and down, all around, men, women. We're just working and moving in the same direction. And that has been something that has been so encouraging and just wonderful in 2022 that I don't know that I've ever experienced in the way that I've seen God do that this year in unifying our church. It's been wonderful.
Yeah.
And on a smaller scale of that, I just want to mention how great the rest of the church staff is too. I think that's worth saying. Like Steve, has Steve ever said, I can't help you out?
No.
Like Steve is always there to help out.
Yep.
Right. Michelle makes
so
much stuff.
Don't let her say anything else to you.
And just has a heart for she helps with kids ministry and has a heart for kids, and just and obviously Andrea, we love Andrea, and just her enthusiasm and just her heart for seeing kids come to know Jesus is just incredible. I mean, I love you guys, but we just got to shout out to the rest of everybody.
This is the lowest of the. This is the bottom tier of our church staff.
And do we even have time to talk about Belinda and the food?
Oh my gosh! Once again,
because
we are Baptist.
I mean, but that's part of it. Even the Wednesday night meals. Again, another time where multi-generational, and you see tables filled with people. What I love is I can step back in the fellowship hall and stand near our deacons, who we need to put a pin in that and come back and talk about them. But they're serving, and I'm able to kind of hang out with them and watch. I'm not having to engage different tables because they're all having conversation among themselves, different age groups, there's just true, genuine fellowship happening. And then when I pop into a table, then I'm able to just kind of jump in and see how they're doing and move along.
But you're not having to carry that load.
I'm not, right.
And it's not even on any of us to have to start conversations or say, hey, meet this person. People are just welcoming and friendly and talking to one another.
It's almost like they want to be here. Believe it or not. It's almost like they're happy and like something changed their lives and they're all loving towards other people and forgiving and kind. It's crazy. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. And it helps when we've seen visitors come and stick around, and that's part of it. Yeah. Right? They sense the family atmosphere. They sense that we genuinely care for one another, and there's a desire then to, hey, I want to be around that more often. Yeah. And so Belinda added into staff is and man, the resolve, steadfastness, whatever you want to say, that she has shown this year with the changes that occurred this year that affected her probably more than it affected any of us, and to be a supporter of this church and someone who loves this church the way that she has. And then Don, with all that he does to unlock different facilities and fix things that we don't even know are broken sometimes, and
or that we broke and tried to pretend that we didn't. But again, our team as a whole. Yeah. I mean, David, you mentioned earlier when one's absent, it adds stress, but that's how any good team works, right? If somebody is missing for a time or not able to perform at the same level for a time, that load is carried by everybody else. But that's what a team does. Yeah. And we've experienced that this year. Yeah. And it's been fun to be part of, but as you step back and reflect on the year, it's been fun to kind of watch as well.
I just realized you guys have like agendas.
We do,
and I don't.
We're bouncing around it, man. You're just along for the ride. You're here. We're tossing it around. The deacons, I wanted to put a pin in that and come back to it because when we're talking about groups, I'm biased, right? Because I'm here, but I dare say you would have a hard time finding a better deacon body than the one we have been blessed with this year. And we've got some new people coming on next year that are going to just enhance that, right? Yeah. But the deacon body, you talked about Steve, who is also a deacon while on staff. They're all that way. Not a one of them have ever, if you say, hey, we need this, or hey.
I don't say no, yeah.
And even if it's, we as a staff haven't thought far enough out to give them a proper heads up. If it's, hey, I know this is short notice, but we really need this to happen. They show up. Yeah. And they don't just show up and grumble through serving. They, again, serve joyfully, and they minister to the people that they're involved with.
Yeah. I was talking a couple months ago when we were, our church was going through the process of electing new deacons. And something that sums up our deacons well is, if you want to know if we're having a deacons meeting on a Sunday morning, here's how you can tell. The back end of our parking lot and down Child Street, which, if you don't know, is basically as far away as you can park in our at our church. Right. It's always full when we have a deacons meeting, because our deacons are park in the back kind of people. What do I mean by that? They are the type of people that say, hey, I'll leave the good parking spots for somebody else. I'll leave the easy way for somebody else. I'll go out of my way to make your life better and to make this place better. I'll do the little things and the hard things, and I'll grill for our 127 yard sale cookout, and I'll come help serve food on Wednesday nights, and I'll help move furniture, and I'll help put stuff up and take stuff down and build stuff for you. I'll do the things that need to be done to make sure that the name of Jesus can go out, that our community can be reached with the love of Jesus, that another generation can be served, that people can be discipled and follow Jesus better. I'll do it, whatever it takes, and I don't need the glory, I don't need the attention, I don't need my name called, but I'll do whatever it takes to make sure that the message and the mission of this church is accomplished. And that's so encouraging, and it's so wonderful, and it really is another testament to the unity of this place and what God's doing here.
Yeah. And to be clear, that's them coming an hour and a half early when the parking lot's empty, and they could have
they could park.
The
They could park up front. Yeah. Yep. They could. Yeah. They could take the best spots and make it easy on them. And they're just that kind of guy. They're that kind of person. They're the put others first type of person. But our summer was really great. We mentioned some of that, and then Bo alluded to this earlier. Coming back into the fall, another moment that kind of stood out to us this year was we did what we've kind of made our rhythm of doing here is we launch our groups back in the fall, and in January we take breaks for Christmas and a short break over the summer. But we come back into that, and we have a worship night. And we do that intentionally because, one, it's something that our families get to kind of do together. If you've never come on a Wednesday night, we're having one coming up on January the 11th. Yep. January the 11th. Hope you'll be there and come worship with us. So you come worship, and it's an easy way to kind of plug into the culture of our church on Wednesday nights and what that's like. But coming back into the fall, before we launched our fall groups back after an incredible summer, we had a worship night.
Yeah.
And that's something that's important in our church is worship. And obviously we've talked some about that, but that night was really a wonderful night in so many ways. And I know how I experienced it from behind the camera a little bit and kind of floating around the room some, but I think your experience, Bo, was probably unique from the front leading. Tell us about that worship night. What stood out to you about it?
Well, it was, I would say, for a Wednesday night, it was very well attended.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes it's easy when there's not a lot of people around you to be bashful about your singing. Mm-hmm. And I did not feel that way. I felt like people, again, felt a sense of freedom to raise their hands, to sing loud. And those are biblical things to do, by the way. We are commanded to sing. Mm-hmm. We are told to lift our hands. These are not things to be scared of. These are things that the Lord designed to complete that enjoyment of Him in our time of worship, and He invites us into doing that. And so I saw a lot of that. I saw a lot of. We had a time of prayer, and just to see people, just laying their hands on other people and praying over them. Mm-hmm. Man, that was that was just such a beautiful moment. It was such a beautiful time. And again, it wasn't like all of the high school kids were over here praying for each other, or all of the senior adults were over here praying for each other. It was a multi-generational thing.
Yeah, that's something that stood out to me about that night was that we took a moment where the team had led us in worship, and then we took a moment to stop and pray. And I remember looking around the room and seeing not just families huddled together praying for each other, not just friend groups, but seeing an adult man in our church go and find a young couple and pray for them, and watching members of our team praying for students, and watching students praying with adults, and seeing how people responded in such an amazing way in that. And what you see a lot of times is people are insecure at times about their level of musical skill. It's not always not everybody's like me that is loud all the time. So I sing loud, I talk loud. It's what I do. Okay, if you've ever been in our church, you probably heard me sing from across the room. It is what it is. It happens. But people are not always as comfortable doing that. People aren't always comfortable praying with somebody that maybe they know, but they're not really close to.
Yeah.
But what you saw in that moment was really what I think was the Holy Spirit breaking down those walls and people responding in such a genuine way.
Again, we've used the word unity, and the Spirit was unifying people that night, and we said the word family earlier. We are becoming a family, and not a family that's closed off.
Right.
Because you can be that kind of family. You can be really tight-knit, so tight that you close yourself off to everybody else.
Yeah.
No, this is a family that loves each other, but is here with open arms.
Yeah.
And
growing and active. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. And part of that, then, I think, spills out into, again, some more of these service-focused things we've done throughout the year, and Overcomers League in September. Something we've done before as a church, but in my time here, since 2019, it was something that it always required our volunteers, and then some other group would come partner with us for that day to have enough volunteers for the players to have people there. And then this year to show up and have more than enough volunteers to the point we had people who could sit in the bleachers with parents and cheer. And we had groups of students, 3 of them assigned to one player, and just I stood that day and I wasn't assigned a player. I just stood to the side and cheered for everybody and was able to just interact. Like, we had so many people, and again, it was all ages. It wasn't that we just had one demographic from the church. There were people from every different generation within our church out there serving together.
Yeah, just with that one event, I know we had over 40 sign-ups, which I think we asked, hey, they would like for us to have about 40. There were 50 plus, closer 60 or more people from our church who, Overcomers League is such a beautiful thing. If you've never experienced it, we're going to go again September sometime. You want to mark your calendar to make sure you're there. But Overcomers League is such a beautiful thing because it is an opportunity to just show up and show kindness and love and respect and honor to some of the most amazing people you'll ever meet. I mean, truly, just some of those wonderful people you can ever meet. And our church, they did that. They embraced that. They all woke up on Saturday and got themselves over to the park, which is not always easy to do. People like Bo with kids, getting your kids up early on a Saturday morning is a struggle at times, I'm sure. So our families embrace that. Our senior adults embrace that. Our students, teenagers don't like waking up. I can tell you that on Saturday morning, they don't want to get up early. Man, we had a bunch of students show up to help and serve at Overcomers League. And it was really kind of a moment for me that was like, wow. I was blown away. We've been, as a staff and our leadership team has been given this vision to serve our city, that Harrodsburg is our heart. That's something we say. And I believe that was the heart of our church. But Overcomers League and into the fall, that was kind of a moment where I was like, oh, Harrodsburg is in our heart.
We can say that.
Harrodsburg is our heart.
Yeah. No, they proved themselves.
Yeah.
Let's say that. And this is like one part praise God, one part thank you. I think is what we're trying to do here. Yeah. And man, I mean, you guys showed up. I mean, the church they showed up.
Yeah.
And
it's just so cool. It's just so cool to watch people serve people in such a wonderful way.
I don't know, like, if this is an insensitive or scary way to say this, but numbers-wise, I think this is the smallest this church has been in a really long time.
Yeah,
but
that would be fair.
Numbers-wise, the most volunteers we've seen at things, at least in my time here, which is skewed because of COVID, but from what I hear from other people who have been here a lot longer are encouraged because so many people are coming and saying, I want to be a part of this. I want to help with this. Tell me what I can do.
Yeah.
And it's not to get a pat on the back or get any glory for themselves, but they just want to help.
People just want to serve. Yep. Right. Yep. And you sense that. And of course, my dad was a pastor for 40 years. I grew up in church ministry. I've served vocationally in churches. I'm 25, so for 5, 6, 7, so I think 6 of the 7 adult years of my life, there was a gap for like 9 months. So I've been around church. I'm going to say that because I'm an expert, but I've been around church. And what you really learn is that churches that are growing and churches that are fulfilling the mission that God has for them are places where people are bought into that vision. And for me, Overcomers League was a huge check. And it was like okay, God, you're doing this. You're doing this because it's not just something that I think is what our church should do or what Jonathan and Bo think our church should do or, our deacons are like, we think our church should do this. This is something that our church is like, this is what we're doing. We're going to just step out and serve our city. And Overcomers League was a moment like that for me. Of course, our calendar didn't stop at Overcomers League. No. And just when you think God is opening doors, just when you think God is moving, just when you think you're like, man, could God do any more? God blows everything out of the water and does even more. And of course, Jonathan has alluded to it. We've made a commitment and partnered with multiple community organizations and continue to do that because of our investment in our city and our love for this place, for Harrodsburg. And with that came some amazing opportunities for us coming out of September and into October. Just God opened some doors, Jonathan.
Yeah. Oktoberfest, which Harrodsburg has had for a number of years. It's always around the first or second weekend of October. This year it was the last day of September and the first 2 days of October. But I can honestly say in my time of living here since 2019, I had never even gone to it, much less been involved with it, but I had never attended it. But through our involvement with Harrodsburg First, which is the organization that puts Oktoberfest on, we were way more involved this year, and again, God opened a door for a partnership between us and Kafka to provide the Kinderland, or the kids' play area. Starting on Friday night of Oktoberfest, we had that on our rooftop. So similar to what we did for Adam Fest, but kind of on a bigger scale. And then, the next 2 days, Saturday and then Sunday afternoon, all down on Chiles Street. I forgot how many inflatables. I think it was 13 or 14. But our people, again, showed up as volunteers to man those inflatables for multiple hours, like 3-hour shifts, right?
Yep.
And that wasn't, again, specific to any age group.
Oh, no.
We had older women and older men and younger people. Like, we had the cross-section of our church on Chiles Street. And it was, again, fun to watch our people serve. And some people would say, what's the big deal? They're standing there manning an inflatable. That's true. But families are able to bring their children down, and it was free. I mean...
Oh, people commented on that.
How many times can you find...
How much does this cost?
Yeah.
Oh, this is free of charge.
Yeah.
What? Free of charge?
Yeah. And to be able to provide that for free through generous donations through our church to sponsor that. And so that partnership was just awesome to see, and the number of families who participated and used our services that weekend was great. And I think we have to talk about at Oktoberfest too, the weather, because the pattern of weather in the history of Oktoberfest, and this has been confirmed for me by several members of Harrodsburg First, that there's always a rain out day, and typically it's Sunday. So typically they have Friday and Saturday, everything's fine, and then Sunday is a wash. And they kind of plan going in, hey, we don't know, because you have an outdoor event, man. If it rains all day, your outdoor event's kind of done, right?
Rain out.
But this year, man, the weather Friday night was great. The weather Saturday was great, and Sunday
Perfect.
It was a great weather day, and we had been praying for that as a staff because of our involvement this year. We thought, how cool would it be if God decided that the year that we get to be involved so much that he were to give us great weather, and obviously the involvement we had that was way different was to be able to move our worship service from in our building out onto one of the two stages for the first ever
By invitation.
We didn't just walk out there and take our stuff.
For the first.
Wasn't a hostile takeover. We were invited.
But for the first ever worship service at Oktoberfest.
And, Bo can talk about this because it's his thing, but just saying, most Oktoberfests don't have worship services.
Right.
I mean, I'm not a huge Oktoberfest guy, but I do know that most of them don't have worship services. And obviously, we're thankful for the leadership through Harrodsburg First that opened that door for us. We're grateful for that. We're thankful that God, moved in their hearts that they would invite us to that. But I think it just speaks to the feeling that I think I alluded to really early, that God's doing something here.
He is doing something, and something else that you said earlier, that when God gives you something small and you're faithful in that, well then He gives you something a little bigger, and we've seen that happen all throughout the year. Specifically with things on Main Street, where I think our church was faithful and showed itself to be trustworthy with the little, and then was handed more.
Yeah.
And so God opened that door, and we were able to go out there and worship the God who saves.
Yeah.
Worship the hope that we've been talking about all year.
Yeah.
Out there, outside.
Yeah.
While people were setting up their food trucks, and while people were showing up for the other events that day, and we had people, we had visitors that day, people who had come to Oktoberfest, or people who were invited to come to the outdoor worship service, and people that I've been praying for, that you've been praying for, that you've been like that showed up to this because it was outside.
Yeah.
And they heard the hope of Jesus through the reading of God's word, through the message that God laid on your heart to preach out of Psalm 23, through the songs that were sung, and we got to sing and proclaim this prayer over from the top of the hill, like shouting from the rooftops almost, over the city. And this was another time when, man, Satan was just like, doesn't want this to happen. But we went out there and we sang God of Revival. And the blessing over this place.
God of Revival, man. There's a moment where I can remember our churches gathered there in the street of our city, and of course the lyrics of the song are "Come awaken this city, come awaken your people, come awaken this city, God of Revival, pour it out." And here we are in a worshipful prayer that God would revive our city, standing in the streets. And I mean, it's a moment where if God was not on our side, that would not happen. And then you take it a step further and say, if it was just us three stooges up here trying to make stuff happen, trying to force it, trying to push it, it's like, God's going to do this whether you like it or not, it wouldn't happen. But together, God has drawn a community that we call HBC, and He's unified us with His Spirit and given us the hope of His resurrection. And now we're just following the path that He's laid out for us. We're just walking in response, and like when we do that, God has opened these incredible doors where we get to stand in the city, on the streets, and sing, God of Revival, pour it out, pour your blessings out on this place that we call home. And that's been amazing.
And see, that's the problem with so many churches, is that they want to stay still. And God has this path for us to walk, right? You just said it. He has this path for us to go down, and there's doors along the path that He's opening. He's like, hey, come into this next room, come into this next part. But so many people want to just stay where they are, and they're missing that blessing of walking into those promises, into that adventure of faith. And again, praise God, He has moved in the heart of the people of HBC to start taking those steps forward and to see where He might take us next.
It's been really exciting. It's been awesome.
So exciting. So exciting.
And even when we watch that, some of our people sincerely have stepped way beyond the bounds of their comfort zone to do some of these things we've talked about. To support our involvement in some of these things. They have faithfully said, you know what? And they've been honest and said, hey, this is a little uncomfortable for me, but I trust that God is leading in this direction, and so I'm going to support. And they've shown up, and they've participated, and they've been faithful to what God has called us to, and through that, like we've said, we've seen him open more and more things. And so you take the first worship service from Oktoberfest, and then you carry that all the way to the kind of the end of the year, and you have Christmas on Main, and the idea is hatched not from me, a pastor who sits on the board of Harrodsburg First, but from members of Harrodsburg First. Hey, is there something we could do to have the churches on Main Street involved with Christmas on Main, and would you pray before we light the Christmas tree for the city? And then to be able to partner with 2 other pastors here of congregations on Main Street to read straight up, because I put the script together just because it was my assignment. I literally took Matthew, Luke, and John and smushed them together for the Christmas narrative. And we were able to read that, and they wanted it done at a time that the most families would be gathered into the park there on Main to see the tree lit, and before the choir from the intermediate school was going to sing. When do you get asked to do that, right? Like it, and so it's just amazing to see all the different ways God has worked and is continuing to work just in and around us.
Yeah. Look, I gotta go back to Oktoberfest for a second. I feel like I held in a sneeze.
Come on.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
I had gotten COVID in September. Hadn't had it all this whole time.
Yeah.
And mid-September, I got COVID. I got over it in time for Oktoberfest, except I was good for like a day, and we had a senior adult luncheon that day.
Yep.
We're outside.
Which was a great
great
time.
Food. Also,
great time.
Senior adults always
Great food from
knocking it out of the
Belinda
park.
again.
Yeah.
Senior adult events are where it's at. Side note.
Yes. Got to lead some songs there, lead some worship that day. Felt totally fine. That night, my throat started feeling sore. By the next day I had laryngitis. And this was like the week before Oktoberfest.
Yeah.
So coming into Oktoberfest, I still had, like, I could sing a little bit, but I didn't think I was going to be able to make it through. So, I mean, I was literally praying, Lord, there's no strength here to do this. You got to do this thing. So I had that going on. We had again, our drummer, he had to work.
Yeah.
I prayed for him to get off. It didn't work that time. I was able to get in touch with a friend of mine from a long time ago in Nashville, and he came up and played drums. And I mean, he showed up Saturday
to play on Sunday.
To play on Sunday, and we practiced for an hour or something on Saturday, and he was ready to go. I mean, he listened to all the songs beforehand, and but God allowed him to be. It was like his one free day in like the whole month.
Yeah,
and he was able to come and be here and be a part of that. And not only was that good for us and a blessing to us, but I think we were able to be a blessing to him and minister to him in a time of transition in his life, which I didn't even know about when I called him. But like, there's these little things that we don't have time to talk about all the little things. But again, this is a snapshot of all the little things. I think we had that morning, that Sunday morning, there were supposed to be 2 audio guys. There's 2 guys on that crew, and one of them runs the front of house sound, which is what everybody hears out front, and one of them is the guy who runs the monitor mix on the stage. So the monitor mix guy just didn't show up. He was supposed to be there to help set up everything, do sound check and all that. He never showed up. So the front of house guy was really frustrated. Yeah. And we were able to take time to minister to him. Yeah. And he was there and got to hear all of the prayers and all of the scripture. Yeah. Like all of these little things where it's like Satan was trying to beat us down.
Yeah.
And God's like, no, I raised the dead.
Yeah.
I'm raising this up. This is happening. And we just trust him, and he makes a way. He makes it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
God has been so good in 2022, and I feel confident that, you know, we don't have time.
It's not over.
Well,
I know. It's wrapping up now.
When he was talking about how we don't have time, like, it made me think instantly the way, and you and I talked about this earlier today, the way John closes his gospel. right? The end of John's Gospel, John 21, verse 25, he says, "And there are also many other things that Jesus did, which, if they were written one by one, I suppose not even the world itself could contain the books that would be written." Not pages, the books that would be written.
Yeah.
And obviously John speaking directly to what Jesus himself did while in the flesh on earth. But what we've seen God do, the same thing. And we hope for you, as we've kind of gone through this year-end review, like, it's not just so we can look and say, "Oh, look what a great year we had. Didn't we do great?" It's to encourage you, hey, reflect on this year as you come to the end of this year, and think about all the things God has done in your life individually, in the life of our church, and thank Him for that, praise Him for that, because
write those things down.
Yeah.
Write them down.
I mean,
put them on your fridge.
And if you're
look at it every day and say, look what God did this year. What could He do in 2023?
Yeah. And if you're watching it on Facebook, man, fill up the comment section with, "Hey, you guys didn't mention this, but I love this," or "You guys did mention this, but this was what stood out to me," because we don't have time to talk about all the little things.
Even in your personal life, the message of hope that God has put into our church was birthed through something very personal for me.
Yeah.
And I know that for many of you, people in our church have been attacked this year.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just been us corporately. You've walked through some hard things. Our church people have struggled with some things. Mm-hmm. And I want you to reflect too, what's God done in your life? What's God, communally done with us? But individually, God has done some amazing, amazing things. And, you think about we've seen souls saved, and we've seen 9 people follow the Lord in baptism and say, "Hey, I want to make a public declaration of my faith in Jesus." We've we estimated over 200 people through our church have served our city. That's huge. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. We looked earlier in that over $50,000 has been given, not to make the church run, not to keep the lights on, not to pay people, but to go and reach people in Harrodsburg and reach people in our state and around the world with the good news of Jesus. And then we said that 200 people, over 200 people, have been in a small group setting in our church this year. So, we believe in community and discipleship. So 200 plus, we're estimating 200 plus, we know over that, have been in a discipleship setting and an opportunity to not just follow Jesus, but said, "Hey, I want to learn how to follow Jesus. I want to do that better." Mm-hmm. So you look at those things and you start to realize, wow, God has been amazing. Mm-hmm. And Bo, you said it earlier, it's not done. No. 2022 is coming to an end, but we're starting to look and go, God's not done.
No, He's not done. We don't just stop here.
Yeah.
Say, "Oh, well, this is a great year. We can just talk about
Close it down, wrap it up. That was a good one. We'll end on a high note."
Yeah. It's not the end of a movie. That's a wrap, Yeah. Well, no, He's not done.
And what's really amazing, and you're going to hear more about this on Sunday, so I'm not going to spoil it. Come on Sunday, join us online. It's New Year's Day. No better place you can start your new year than worshiping in God's house. But what we really believe God is speaking to us and speaking to our church is this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
God is just getting started.
It feels that way.
And God has shown that to us. You think about how I felt coming out of Overcomers League, and God was like, "Hey, you think that's cool? Watch Oktoberfest. You think that's cool? Watch me open more doors. You think that's cool? Watch me do the impossible time and time and time again."
Yeah.
And God, He's been faithful. He's been so good, and it's been amazing. It's been amazing.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it's almost dumbfounding, right? You just sit and you're it's almost a what happened,
and it's God, because and something I pray a lot specifically about our church is, God, will you do something so that nobody else could possibly get the glory, right? Like, because when God shows up, big things happen and everybody knows it. Like, we're just a couple of dummies with good hearts, and Bo can sing good, and me and Jonathan can talk pretty good, But God couldn't do this just because we've got a good staff, and we feel like we do. God couldn't do this just because we've got good deacons who serve and work. God is doing this because God is powerful. And God is showing his power in our community, in personal things we're experiencing, in outward things, and how our community is responding. But it really is something I'm so confident is a move of God, because it's not anything that anybody could cook up on their own. It's just not possible.
Yeah. No. How exciting is it? How exciting would it be to be a church that the things that the world looks at us and sees us accomplish can't be explained in any other terms than God.
Yeah.
There's where they could look and say, "There's no way. How did they accomplish that? There's no way they could do that."
Yeah.
And then we get to sit back and say, "It's because we didn't.
We didn't.
We didn't.
Yeah.
It was God.
Yeah.
It was Jesus through us that did it."
Yeah.
And he gets all the glory and all the praise.
Yeah.
And we get to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just get to be in the room. I've said that several times this year. Specifically for me, because it was such a personal moment. I think about Easter and how God moved in that service, and really what I came away from that was, man, I just got to be in the room. And God gave me that message for our church, but I didn't walk out of there thinking, man, what a great sermon I preached. It was, man, God, you just let me be in the room for that.
Yeah.
You got to watch me work in people's lives. I got to watch God work and watch God move, and my eyes just got to see it. And I look back at 2022 and that message of hope, where a year that started with so much frustration and struggle started with me personally in darkness. The hardest day of my life came 31 plus 19, 45, 50 days into the year. A year that could have been marked by that. Mm-hmm. Instead, was marked by hope.
Yeah.
And how beautiful is that? And how much is that a testament to the gospel of Jesus Christ? That, this year could have, many churches, when they go through some of the things that we've gone through, it creates a culture of bitterness, a culture of anger, a culture of, well, we've got to show up and make this thing happen because nobody else will, or it's going to all fall apart if I don't do it. But instead, out of all that, the overwhelming message that has come out of that has been a message of hope. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit the plan or the pathway that you think would be laid out. But what we've seen is a genuine work and move of God, and I'm just excited to see what He keeps doing.
Me too.
Yeah, there's definitely not a. You won't find a book out there on church growth strategy that ever says start your year the way 2022 started for us.
No. Get everybody sick.
And then
have a leadership change.
And the expected results be what we've seen this year.
Yep.
And again, that's a testament to who God is and what He has done, not any of us. And it look. Even as we were sitting here going through this list, stuff kept popping in my head like, oh, we didn't talk about that. Oh, we didn't talk about Maundy Thursday.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about the reconciliation weekend. We didn't talk about the feeding the football team. We didn't talk about fifth quarter. Like there's so many different things that we didn't even address because the multiple things at CUH and some of those that are continuing into the new year.
We're just stepping into those doors like you talked about. They're open and we're just walking through.
Upward this past season and now upward coming up. Again, there's not time to sit and talk through all of it.
Yeah.
There's not.
And we got to wrap it up.
We do appreciate you spending the last hour with us.
Yeah. More than an hour
really
at this point, I think. But and we've already said the word for 2022 was hope.
Yeah.
And we want you to know, heading into 2023, again, we've already mapped out sermons for the year, and the word that's clear to us as a team as we prayed through, and you'll hear it more and more in the sermon series in 2023 is prepare or preparation.
Yeah,
it's get ready.
God's about to do something really special, and I hope that you'll join us on Sunday. I'm preaching on Sunday, so I hope that doesn't scare you off. There's a message that God's put in my heart and that we've discussed that I think is going to kind of set up our year. And
I'll be there.
Bo's going to be there.
Yeah.
He's going to be
I'll
leading
be there.
worship.
I'm excited about it.
Lord,
But
Lord
keep
willing, we'll all be there.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I hope
Lord
that,
willing, yeah.
hope that you'll join us. And man, I'm excited for 2023. God's been good, and man, the best is yet to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. So we thank you all for listening to this special edition of the Sharing Our Journey podcast, or watching if you watch this online. And HBCers, we love each and every one of you, and we, as Bo said earlier, we praise God throughout this whole thing, but we also say thank you
Yep.
in large ways to you all for sharing this journey with us this year.
Yeah.
And for coming along on some crazy adventures. And we're hopeful that you'll continue to come along on even more to see where God leads next. And so for your families, we hope you have had a Merry Christmas, but we hope that you will have a great New Year as well, and start out New Year's Day seeing us on Sunday morning, and let's worship God together on New Year's Day. When else do you get to spend New Year's Day in the house of the Lord worshiping God?
Yeah.
So a great way to start 2023. Until next time, again, we love you, and we're thankful for you, and go with God.